Yeah.
But the only thing that you can really pick up on for sure is that all of these guys, if they were these famous politicians, famous generals and things like this, again, we've talked about the aspect of greed and the want of power that comes with the territory of joining these sort of groups. You could very much say that is the overriding thing, really, that these people wanted to find out about their indigenous thing, but wanted to hide that from everybody at the same point.
Right.
Whilst at the same point misunderstanding it all as well.
Well, because they might not...
Creating chaos in their own lives, and obviously that spilled out into the countries as well,
Yeah.
From that point onwards, a lot of really, really hideous stuff went on, through the Industrial Revolution and all of these periods which we had lots and lots of wars. And a lot of these guys seem to have been trying to plug back into their indigenous roots. And obviously one of the darker ones that we had come on this level, which again we could say would be kind of a pseudo-Christian thing, because he talked about Catholicism a lot, but also talked about his indigenous Germanic Teutonic roots would be Hitler.
Yeah.
So we can see a lot of different levels to this, and again it shows another side to the misunderstanding, or perhaps the hijacking of this term Aryan. But
yeah, of course.
Maybe you could say it's both at the same time rolled together.
And it feels like they're, as you say, they don't come from a perspective of understanding. It's more about taking the knowledge, of course, but also kind of controlling that dominion, as it were. If there are, for instance, a lot of people in one area that are into Druidism, they're into understanding the Celts or what have you, they need to have some kind of control over those types of organizations. So as soon as people get an interest in these areas, all the groups are already in place for you to go into. But a matter of fact, when you go into these groups, you might not get to the core of the knowledge, but you actually might just get a scratching the surface on it, if you will. What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. These very much the institutionalized groups, because you've got very many druidic groups or kind of bardic or avartic groups which are really great and are really very much in connection with the earth and are really doing some brilliant work. But then you've also got this very institutionalized group, the AOD, and they're kind of the other affiliate groups around this, and these guys are the ones that are allowed to go and practice at Stonehenge and any other stone circle that they choose at any point of the year. And not everybody is allowed to do that. And so, Churchill would have been a member of one of these groups.
Right.
And if you look into these groups, you'll find that the medals, I doubt that the ancient Druids, after 20 years of training, got a medal. But these guys are going through the degree system pretty much.
Yeah.
In a pseudo-Druidic form.
Right.
So they're understanding this Druidic knowledge on a Freemasonic level. And, that plugs back into what we talked about in the very first part of our interview, where I talked about my grandfather's connections with Freemasonry. And obviously he had a lot of interest in the Druidic orders.
Yeah.
And a lot of this material as well, So, it's something that we can definitely see is a big point.
There seems to be that it's kind of a standard in many cases of different fraternal orders and those who come into an area and might want to control these different organizations and even set them up, but they do it the same way as they do with the buildings. You have mentioned many times, of course, in this program that they for instance, when they come to a certain area and they have taken it over, they might build a church on top of the old temple sites or what have you. Michael Zorin has mentioned this in many of our programs too, in connection to the Druids and the Celts, that they were taken over in this manner. When the Christians came in there, they conquered the area and then built their temples or churches right above their own. But they also always kind of seem to be using the symbols of the area, the you know, the plants that are in the area, the animals that are in the area. You know, it's a standard format, I guess, because if they were to throw everything out, no one of the of that region, the people would come back to you know, to join these orders, because it would be too disconnected from their ancient roots. So I think it's a bit of a standard, I think, to do it like that.
Yeah, a great example of that is funnily, I touched on this individual, a lady, a goddess known as Brigid, and we actually have an account by, you know, Catholic historians. We have a mythology of a Saint Brigid, you know, who's from like the 4th or 5th century, I forget which, but she has all of the attributes of the ancient Gaelic goddess Brigid,
right?
But she's Christianized. And you know, that's a very blatant one, and you can just look up Brigid and you'll find out all of this information very easily.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and that really opens it up there, because then you can see that a lot of these figures have been bounced around, and also that you have always this overlay of the most important aspects of the past are kind of picked out and then transported to a newer version of that, you know, to be implemented in whatever way.
Is there an easy way then to get to the real knowledge, let's say, of the Celts or the Druids? Is there a way to you know, tap into that without, you know, accessing it through these orders, because they might still have some of the knowledge intact, they might still keep it for their own purposes or what have you, but I mean, is there good sources to go and read to get to the real knowledge about this?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few scattered around books that you can read about Druidry, and yeah, I'd say most probably the best list of books that you could find would be on Michael Tsarian's page, on his Irish Origins page.
Yeah.
You know, he's got lists of lots of really great authors that, and you know, I'd very much say after him studying it for so long, he's got a great list of people to talk about it.
Yeah.
But from my own perspective, I'd say that the real way to tap into the Druidic or Aryan or, you know, the indigenous ideologies is just to go out into nature and to connect to that. And it's all about that individual connection with your environment, with all the flora and the fauna. And that's kind of one of the key points of my work, is for people not to think that I'm, you know, getting all teary-eyed about this one island or this one place.
Yeah.
But that I'm making the point that if you look into your own mythology, that you will find the most profound teachings that you've ever experienced within your own country. If you just look back to the oldest sources, because this material, obviously, it's set in the place that you're from. It's using, you know, languages and names that you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And again, it connects to the flora and the fauna, so it resonates with you on that very deep level, and you will gain massive insights from doing this. So hopefully, you know, that is one of my main points anyway with the material, is it's not really important what I say. The overall conclusion is that the city's a lot older, you know, but that doesn't really make any difference to anybody else.
Yeah.
But the point is, look into your own indigenous philosophies, ideologies and history, and you'll find much of the same, you know, and there'll be people that are going to find much more incredible things than I've found. You know, this is a very micro version of it.
It's right.
Yeah, so I'd say that really is the best way to connect to the Druidic or the indigenous philosophy, is to connect to nature and to read the oldest material from your country that you can.
Yeah, very good, very interesting. And as you say, that this is more about rediscovering that in a way then, because so much have been lost, but there's still sources out there, of course. But I mean, I like that idea a lot of you know, going out and doing it yourself, watching, observing nature and the region that you are in, and everywhere you go on Earth, it's a different place, and it's a special place wherever you come, you know. So
yeah, and I mean, core to the the Druidic whole passage, that trial of passage of learning, would be a 20-year training, and that would include going all over the place, sampling different weathers, different people, different cultures, different trees, different animals. And doing this, that was the 20 years of actually getting a connection with things.
Yeah.
The oral tradition was the stories and the legends, and there were obviously things connected to do with their actual philosophies themselves. But majority of the time, it's that very simple thing of just going out there and doing it yourself, and actually taking the time to get acquainted with things, with the sense of things, and you can get to the deeper and more inspiring things by doing that yourself, and not just reading a book by somebody else about it.
Yeah, of course. Very good. And when we go back a little bit more to the 1700s, as it were, and talk about the character John Wood, this is pretty interesting in regards to some of the important sites today in Bath, especially some of the circuses and so forth. We can begin, I guess, with John Wood the Elder. He was born in 1704, and I guess that he is an important character when it comes to Bath, isn't that right?
Yeah, he's very important. For the largest point when the city was being built, he was actually the town planner. This was a very important position at that point, because any building that was built within a city, you would have to consult the town planner, because the geometric layout of the city was so vitally important to the architects which had laid it out. So they wanted to carry on this, the idea, keep it in the style that they originally envisioned. And so Wood was the town planner, and you still have town planners today.
Yeah.
Although they don't have as much power in saying what can and can't go up. But, they still are a very powerful and well-paid individual. As you said, he was born, and so he was 13 in 1717.
Right.
And what you have with this guy is he was training as a stonemason from, 13, 14. And then after working with some very, very skilled stonemasons, started to be trained to be an architect at the age of 16. And then by the age of 19, he's built his first house in London. To be an architect in today's world, you have to train for a long time.
Yeah.
And to try and take on a kind of a Georgian neoclassical style, a Palladian style, as we've talked about before, at the age of 19. And it was what was called a speculative build. And this obviously connects again back with operative masonry and speculative Freemasonry.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when an architect would build a building, and it was called speculative, it was that he built it before anybody actually asked him to build it. So it was somebody who was going to build the building on the premise that they knew that somebody would like it and want to live in it afterwards. So, the metaphysical ramifications of that in connection with Freemasonry are quite large.
Yeah.
But it's very much something I'd say to people to have to think about themselves. Wood, obviously he was this maverick who effortlessly kind of got into this Palladian style. And the reason that he did that was that he was inspired by quite a few guys that came before him. And there was a guy called Inigo Jones, who, as we mentioned before, the Queen's House in Greenwich was actually built by Inigo Jones. I find it fascinating that in conventional history, if you look into this guy, he was kind of known as the first quintessential British architect and archaeologist.
Really?
And so, Inigo Jones, Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I think there's at least quite a large possibility that George Lucas knows a lot more about archaeology